Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is somewhat notorious for a lot of characters having very simple game plans without a lot of advanced character-specific tech. Does that mean there's none to be found? No, it doesn't, and that's what we're looking at today, for the second time. This is a rare part too because I got horrendously sick in the middle of my last filming attempt. And just to keep things interesting, this time around, every tech shown is clearly breaking the rules that the game was supposed to have. I'll have the first part linked all over the place. You don't technically need to watch them in order. This top row is gonna stay blank, so there are no spoilers. I would certainly recommend it, and I'd better not get any of those, well, what about X comments for things that showed up in the first video. I know I will, but that's up to you. Let's get into it. Super quick heads up, I am on Blue Sky now at Mr. MockRock, which is the same as my Twitter handle, so if you're understandably not using Twitter anymore, you can find me there. I'm just going to be cross-posting to both for the most part. And also, if you're a Rivals of Aether 2 player, I'm in their creator program. If you're buying any cosmetics and you enter code MockRock, you actually get free premium currency, no strings attached, just for doing that, and they also give me a little bit of the sale. So true win-wins all around. Back in Smash territory, we're opening up with not the most secret tech out there, but very powerful and ubiquitous tech, Bayonetta's triple jump. If Bayonetta's notorious for one thing, it's having extremely powerful air combos that are very faithful to her home series. While they're not nearly as lethal in Ultimate as they were in Smash 4, she can still very comfortably carry you across the sky, and yes, it's still not even that rare for her to kill you off them. And a huge part of the reason she's able to extend like that is because she is fairly uniquely able to do 2 up specials in a single air time. She can do that with her side special too, but in both cases, they've put some restrictions on them to rein in that ridiculously powerful mobility. In the case of side special, you need to actually hit your opponent. If you don't,
you get nothing! You lose!
That's decently restrictive. For her up special, on the other hand, you need to jump first before you get your second one. And don't get me wrong, in Smash, while you're in the air, your double jump is a very valuable resource that you really want to try and preserve, but you know, at the very least, you don't need an opponent cooperating with you. You can still do it whenever you want. So I would say overall, up special is the less restrictive move, but even then, you can actually cheat the system. So here's one witch twist from the ground, here's a second witch twist after a jump just like intended, but wouldn't it be nice to just cut out the middleman and instead do this? Look at that, 2 witch twists in a row. Now, some observant viewers among you may have gone, wait a minute, that wasn't 2 witch twists in a row. The double jump ring came out in between them. You just jumped like normal. Oh yeah, genius, then why can't I do this? Double jump. I clearly didn't burn my double jump in between them. I don't know what you're talking about. The thing is, there's actually a bit of leniency built into the input, so you can do your witch twist and then start jumping as expected, but then provided you immediately enter the witch twist again, it doesn't actually count you as having jumped, and you can double jump again, despite the fact that you clearly jumped and gained height. From everything I could find, I think this is intended to be a concession for tap jump players, you know, those psychopaths who jump by flicking up on the control stick, because otherwise trying to do an up special without burning your double jump would be quite difficult. Mind you, it's difficult for other characters too, including ones whose up specials also don't put them into free fall or consume their double jumps, but I don't know what to tell you, Bayonetta gets special treatment. And presumably because limiting that to stick-only inputs would be unfair, button inputs get brought along for the ride. There's about a 4-frame window where you can input this to get the freebie, so she's gonna start jumping around now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, she built some height, but you know, it's not actually a third jump's worth of height. You still need to input this fairly quickly. Even then, there's a catch though, because remember, she has 2 witch twists, and wouldn't you know it, she can do this after each of them. And now we're really getting up there. Here's about the max height I can build playing as intended. You know, not bad. She's really good in the air. Okay, now let's cheat. Oh my god. What is this? And you don't need to do that massive climb right away. You can just build a ridiculous amount of height and still have your double jump and side special available to you. So it's really flexible and freeing compared to the options you're kind of more intended to be locked into. So yeah, as you'd imagine, the triple jump is very important Bayonetta tech. It's not all that difficult to do. A 4-frame input is enough that you can basically just swipe your thumb between the jump and special button and you'll get it quite consistently. And it plays a huge role in extending her combos, for general mobility, and disadvantage state, for letting her go very, very deep off stage and still comfortably make it back. Even without it, she'd still be one of the most dominant aerial characters in the series, but every time you see that trademark double jump ring, yep, just know, she's cheating. For part 1 of this video, I also got comments asking me to talk about the Witch Strike for Bayonetta, that technique where you hit them with only the first part of the hitbox, which is very good and has become a bigger and bigger part of Bayonetta's meta as time's gone on. At the same time though, intentionally whiffing multi-hits is a lot older than her, so I don't really know how character specific you can call it.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
You could make a case for it, but regardless, the triple jump is a lot more fundamental, and also, they go very well together. This character just keeps getting scarier over time. Moving in a more defensive direction next, we have Zelda with Phantom Displacement. Now, if Zelda's notorious for any one thing in Ultimate, it's this move right here, the Phantom, one of the most infuriating lockdown tools that exists. It's got one very substantial flaw though. While that shield that the Phantom has in its hand is perfectly functional and does block basically anything you throw at it, it can only do so much good when the Phantom spawns in behind Zelda, and it takes a while to summon too. Enter Phantom Displacement, which at its core is basically just a slingshot or instant RAR motion, which is dash one way, flick the stick diagonally downwards the other way, and do a short hop, which is more like this full speed. Now my notched controller just broke, so I'm using a standard Pro controller right now. That does admittedly make hitting that angle harder.
No jumps.
And then while you're in the middle of this motion, you just spawn a Phantom, and altogether, it looks like this. And as you can see, Zelda is now fully protected by the Phantom. There's no way I'm getting hit by that projectile anymore. I'm completely safe. The timing on this is fairly tight, and that's because Zelda has two variants of the Phantom. She has the grounded Phantom, which generally has no reason to move because she's locked in place while she's spawning it. And then she also has the aerial Phantom, which does follow her momentum while it's coming in. So you want to hit this at just the right timing where you're separating them. You get the aerial Zelda and the grounded Phantom, which no longer follows behind her, and then you simply turn that around. Getting the basic Phantom Displacement is not that bad, you know, you can learn it in a decent amount of time, but depending on your exact technique in terms of how she jumps and how you control her air drift afterwards, you can get varying degrees of Phantom Displacement. Let's see if I can get a really good one. Oh yeah. That's the good stuff right there, look at that. Until that Phantom fires, Zelda is functionally untouchable. With Bayonetta, the triple jump is mandatory to play her with any degree of competency. That's not as true with Phantom Displacement. For a long time, it was kind of an optional thing, and to some extent still is, although for the most part, a lot of stronger Zeldas do incorporate it pretty fluidly into their game plan nowadays. There are a few caveats with the technique. First off, it's not a trivial input. Like, it's not that bad, but there is a skill element for sure, especially if you want to go for the more extreme variants, which honestly, situationally, is not even always the variant that you want, even if you can do it. Because the other hiccup with Phantom Displacement is it always involves giving up at least a bit of stage control, and the further you decide to take it, the more stage control you give up. A fairly substantial part of Zelda's game plan involves setting Phantom up and then rushing in to take advantage of the fact that their opponent needs to try and maneuver around it. Now, to be fair, she's not the absolute best equipped character for this in the first place. You know, she's not particularly fast, and her aerials are fairly specific. Her forward and back air are quite small, and then her up air covers a lot more space, but it's not particularly horizontally oriented, so she's not the world's best juggler. And moderate Phantom Displacement still offer her decent protection without impeding her ability to rush in afterwards too badly. There is always going to be some amount of trade-off though. Is the trade-off generally worth it? I would say yes, absolutely it is. Zelda wants a Phantom. Zelda always wants a Phantom. If she can spawn one without putting herself in danger, she's gonna do it. It's already an infamously obnoxious tool to try and get around. Being able to fully utilize it while also shutting down a lot of the usual counterplay, that is absolutely worth building up the muscle memory. So that one's a bit more subtle. It makes the Phantom much more versatile, but doesn't fundamentally change what it does. For Diddy, we're back to something very transformative. So I assume a lot of people watching this video probably know what B reversing is, but for those that don't, hi Nana. You simply do a special move and then immediately tap your joystick in the opposite direction, and not only does it turn the attack around, it also turns your momentum around. And Diddy Kong's monkey flip generates a hell of a lot of momentum, so reversing that would open up some really tricky options, and wouldn't you know it, he's actually got a very good B reverse candidate with his neutral special, the peanut pop gun. Or at least it should be a great candidate. The thing is, this does reverse your momentum, but you're also locked into firing off the peanut pop gun, so anyone with half a brain's gonna hit you while you're stuck in that animation. You can also B reverse his banana peel toss, which, don't get me wrong, has its uses, but it's still a little on the leggy side, and also you really don't want to give your opponent a banana peel. And technically you also can B reverse his up special, but you know, don't. We're so close with the peanut pop gun. If only he wasn't locked into this animation. Well, actually, technically he's not. You can cancel it into a shield on the ground, which is nice. What happens if you shield in the air, though? You get an air dodge. And again, it's just not quite what we're looking for. What we really need is to be able to just pull the pop gun out and put it away. And as you might imagine, that's what we're here for. This is called the peanut pop gun cancel, and there are multiple ways to do it, ranging from very easy to quite difficult. Let's start with by far the easiest, and also, as far as I'm concerned, the least practical method, all you need to do is hold shield and keep holding shield while you jump out, and then in the air with your shield button depressed, simply tap and hold special, and you will instantly cancel the peanut pop gun on the first possible frame without getting an air dodge. So yeah, those inputs are actually very easy, and it does give you exactly what you're looking for. Look at that, beautiful. And there are a few other methods you can do as well, other actions where you can hold shield in the middle of them to prime this, or say you can do an aerial and then hold special and shield in the middle of the animation, and you'll get a cancel as soon as it ends. And these do see play because yeah, the inputs are quite easy. I used the term impractical earlier. I probably should have said more like restrictive, because obviously the flaw with all of them is you need to set them up ahead of time. There's a far better method of getting the cancel, which gives it to you absolutely no strings attached. All you need to do is tap shield and special and keep holding special. The catch, though, is you need to hit these on literally the exact same frame. If your timing isn't absolutely flawless, you're just gonna get an air dodge, or even worse, you're gonna get a peanut pop gun into air dodge. It's not undoable, and you can use your grab button instead of your shield button, which on a lot of control schemes is like the clickier button, you know, your Z button on GameCube or your R on your Pro Controller. But a frame perfect input is precise enough that no matter how much you practice, you're not going to hit it 100% of the time, especially in the middle of an intense match. And yeah, the consequences for missing it can be pretty bad. When you do get it though, this is by far your best option. So yeah, you just kind of have to learn it.
Knowledge.
Now there is actually at least one nice alternative method for performing peanut popcorn cancels. It's more conditional than the others, but it's still very useful and not too technically demanding. So if you tap the grab button on your controller, you know, Z, R, whatever, all it's really doing at a code level is pressing shield and attack on the same frame, which is also why for the orthodox cancel method, you can choose whether you do it with your shield button or your grab button. So the stars align in a way where you can exploit that alongside some intricacies of exactly what's prioritized over what when you're buffering inputs in a way that I think I might understand, but I'm not confident enough to try and explain it. It doesn't really matter. Bottom line, you can charge peanut pop gun and then start holding a direction. And then while you're doing that, you can swiftly input jump, then grab, which on a Pro Controller is very easy. Jump, grab, and you get this, or this, or this, or this. It's still a pretty tight input, but importantly, it's a long way from frame perfect. In fact, as long as your controller's set up to accommodate it, it's not that hard to do. I mean, you can do a frame perfect if you really want to, but if you mess up, you're gonna get the air dodge again. Now, again, there are a couple of big catches on this one. It's nowhere near as fast as the more orthodox method because you have to throw out an attack. And the other major thing to consider is this method here costs you your double jump, which, as we went over earlier, is an incredibly valuable resource that you don't want to burn. So that means if you're monkey flipping high up at a disadvantage, it cuts off a lot of options for you, and if it's the only method you know how to do, you can't even enable it without a double jump. On the flip side though, this method is also really good for tricky movement mix-ups like that. Never underestimate the power of ambiguous movement, especially on a tricky character like Diddy. This method sees quite a lot of use nowadays. Yes, you do commit to using your double jump, but a lot of the time when you're B reversing in the air, it's to do some kind of double jump mix up anyways, so it's not actually really that big a drawback, if a drawback at all in many circumstances, and on top of that, being able to buffer an attack instantly is often fantastic, especially on a character like Diddy, because attacks can pick up items. Whichever method of peanut popcorn cancel you use, it takes what's otherwise not a bad projectile, but certainly nothing particularly impressive, and completely transforms it into a radical movement booster. It's a staple in disadvantage state for getting around the stage more fluidly, for setting up tricky edge guards. Diddy is far from the physically strongest character on the roster. The things that really make him scary are his banana peel, of course, that's a long time staple, and also his mobility. Outmaneuvering your opponent is always very important in platform fighters, but a character in his archetype absolutely lives or dies by how well he can move. And the peanut popcorn cancel opens up massive new avenues that he otherwise would have no way to access. Using them well has played more and more of a role in his high-level meta as time's gone on, and it also helps that, you know what? They just look cool, and that's unironically important. If you feel cool playing your character, you may well play better. And for our penultimate entry, I've gone with another powerful mobility tool, Mii Brawler's BDK boosting. So, back in the world of B-reverses, you can actually B-reverse quite a few special moves, including certain side specials. And when you do that with certain zoomy side specials, you can get some interesting properties. So I'm gonna do a conventional electroshock arm here. Notice where Dark Pit's foot ends up, his toes are touching around the middle of the square. Okay, now from exactly the same starting point, I'm using the training mod, so I have save states. Watch what happens when I B-reverse it. That's a decent distance further. In Dark Pit's case, he takes this bizarre stutter step forward. It's not the only Smash move that's had this kind of hiccup over the years, and the general explanation I've heard is it has to do with the way your momentum is shifted around by B reversing, but your deceleration is not, so that means it turns into acceleration. So this is not technically character-specific tech because multiple characters with burst specials like Mii Brawler's Burning Dropkick, for example, can use it. But in practice, no, it is kind of character-specific tech because most people don't bother with this even if they're playing a character who can use it. You know, the boosts you get are often pretty humble and kind of situational, often not even worth the risk of messing up the input. Mii Brawler's Burning Dropkick, on the other hand, gets absolutely insane when you do this. It's very fast at a base level and also carries his momentum with it in a way that most specials in Ultimate don't. So if you combine those traits with acceleration it was never intended to have, yeah, this thing becomes an absolute monster. You want a neutral burst option that goes most of the way across the stage? You got it. You want an absolutely colossal boost to your recovery distance? That works too. I've talked about this move on the channel before, and if you want a real deep dive into it, Fire the Pyro did a full Burning Dropkick video last year including this technique, but I still wanted to bring it up here because this legitimately is a really cool exploit. Burning Dropkick wasn't really intended to fill this kind of role. It was supposed to be your typical burst option. It wasn't supposed to be able to do like half stage stuff, but as it turns out, it's perfectly fine. More than fine, actually. I would say pretty healthy. It makes sense and actually feels pretty in character for the game's quintessential brawler to be able to get in your face and punish you like this, and the payoff is humble enough that it's not cheap. You win neutral, but you're not getting a big combo off it or blowing them up super early or anything, and it also comes with some legitimate risk. It's not safe on shield. It's not safe if it whisks a lot of the time. This is not a Sonic spin dash situation, right? The brawler player is not free to just throw themselves at you over and over and you can't do anything about it. They need to predict what you're gonna do. In other words, if you get hit by this, it's probably your fault, and as far as I'm concerned, that's some healthy Smash. Now, as I said in part 1 of this video, which I did recommend you watch first, the honorable mentions here are gonna be pretty hefty. I'm obviously trying to pick powerful stuff, but at the same time, this is a showcase video. Donkey Kong's cargo throw cancel, for example. Land on a platform with just the right timing, and it'll cancel the end leg of your throw, and you can go up and kill them stupidly early off the top. Is it powerful? Yes, extremely. Is it incredibly interesting or eye-opening to talk about for people who are familiar with competitive Smash? I'm gonna say probably not. This is DK in Ultimate. If you know the game, you've seen this. You know, Peach Float Cancel's gotta be up there too. Phenomenally powerful, one of the strongest techs in any Smash game consistently since Melee, but again, there isn't really competitive Peach without it. Lucas and Ness's double jump cancel shenanigans are up there too. It's not nearly as ubiquitous. Actually, you know what, for Lucas at this point, I would say you do need to be able to do it pretty consistently. For Ness, it's not as essential, but still extremely useful. Part 1 of this video did also have some different double jump cancel stuff in it. You've got Duck Hunt's knockback storage, a very strange tech where if you tap special just as the can's getting hit, then that means the next time it gets hit, it'll actually use the momentum of what hit it previously. Pretty gimmicky, and you don't see it too much in practice, but it is fun. You've got Shulk's dial storage, where he has multiple ways of starting to pull the Monado dial up, then canceling it, and then the next time he goes to pull it up, he actually gets discounted those startup frames from the first attempt. And it's got what seems to me like some pretty substantial implications, but in practice, you just don't see most Shulk players do this very often. I asked about this at one point, and they just kind of said, yep, I don't feel the need. And I still find this a bit strange, to be honest. In Smash 4, Shulk players were notorious for milking extremely convoluted tech just to try and let their character keep up. And in Ultimate, I understand a lot of that stuff's not as necessary anymore, his frame data is way better, but to see even these relatively easy optimizations not being used anymore on a character who, let's face it, could have better results and does have room to grow, I don't know. I hope I don't sound too arrogant here. I'm not a Shulk player or a top player by any means, but something about this just still doesn't click with me. Focusing back, Pac-Man's hydrant boosting is not especially powerful, but it is hilarious. You've got King K. Rool's Crown Slide, that's a fun one. Pretty easy to do as well, people figured that one out very fast. Little Mac's Gazelle Punch off the ledge. Joker's Gun Slide, kind of a pseudo wave dash, that one's a classic. Does Link's Bomb Recovery count as a tech? Blowing yourself up? I guess so, especially because he has multiple ways to execute it, which means Snake, I guess, gets dragged into it too. That one takes way less finesse though. Ice Climber's desyncs, of course, but I'm here to make a video, not write a thesis. If people know anything about competitive Isabelle, it's likely the Wobble where you walk forward ever so slightly after every jab, but she also has the Glyroid, the most cheerful looking slide on the roster. Captain Falcon's got Scarb, shield cancelled aerial raptor boost, and look, I gotta cut this off at some point. Smash Ultimate has a bit more character-specific tech than you might think. For the grand finale though, there's nothing I want to talk about half as much as Piranha Plant's Spallow. Katui here is Piranha Plant's best move, and it's not even close. The only reason this character can really do anything in Ultimate, Oh my god, that's sad. The only reason this character can do anything in Ultimate is because of how insane this projectile is. It's also got two distinct animations. It's got the spitting animation where you fling it at your opponent, and it's got a much quicker swallowing animation. Launching it at your opponent is much more committal, both because you can only have one out at a time, you're locked out of it while a Patui is on the stage, and also because the spitting animation is much more committal, it's got more ending lag. The Spallo is a fairly advanced technique where you still spit the projectile at your opponent at a low angle, but you also get the less laggy animation. Now, this is really difficult tech. It takes multiple basically frame perfect inputs, so I'm probably gonna be here a while. Oh, I got it! Look at that! It doesn't cover a ton of space, but in close quarters, it's really good. It's extremely safe, you can combo off it easily, but man, does it take precise timing. You need to do a neutral input at a very fixed distance above the ground, which varies depending on your velocity, by the way. I'm just doing the short hop method here. And then you also need to flick the stick towards your opponent on the absolute perfect frame. Back in part 1, I committed to learning all the tech I was going to talk about in this video. Sometimes I knew what I was getting into, sometimes I didn't. This time around, I very much did, and that's because I've talked about this before, and it was a nightmare to record back then, too. But it was in the context of Patui being a phenomenal move, and then hey, on top of that, did you know there's this extremely difficult, impractical, obscure tech that people have known about for a long time but nobody actually uses? Kind of a neat curiosity, isn't it? So anyways, this multiple frame perfect technique is getting used in large tournaments now. It's happened more than once, but the charge is definitely being led by the appropriately named Tass from Japan. He got top 8 at Sumobaro, a Japanese major, along with some other really good placements, and he is practically using Spallo in his matches. He doesn't get it perfectly every time. Again, frame perfect stuff is never going to be 100%, but he gets it often enough that this is a legitimate, real thing, and I just think that's so cool. There's a lot of tech that gets discovered in the modern games that never really gets widely utilized. I just think modern Smash titles don't have long enough life cycles. Spallo is one of those things where, you know, you'd see it discussed on character discords or labbed out on YouTube, but I fully expected Smash Ultimate to completely pass us by without ever having it implemented in practical high-level play. And I am so happy to be proven wrong. The Plant Gang was very vocal before Piranha Plant came out, and afterwards, not a peep. So the fact that 6 years into the game, you still got people going, I'm taking this obscure character and I am doing whatever it takes to make it work. That, as far as I'm concerned, is the spirit of competitive Ultimate. And unless you're an absolute top-level player, whenever you're complaining about your main, think about those frame-perfect inputs, and seriously consider whether it's the fault of the character, or if you need to put in the work. Anyways, fix Dark Pit Snare. Thanks for watching, everyone. I know the formatting took a bit of a detour here. What did you think of the list? Likes and comments go a long way towards videos being boosted on YouTube, so if you think this deserved it, much appreciated. You can check out another video up top, a video on MockRock below, and patrons and members get perks like early videos and Discord access. Later, people.